How's it going, ladies and Bruce and Supple? Sixkilla and welcome back to Sekimeiya. We're getting very close to the end here, and we have discovered that we cannot change the past, we cannot save Mia. Now we just want to go find Shidoya and live out the rest of our days. However that fucking eventuality is going to work out. Anyway, let's continue, shall we? 12:43, November 28th. I hadn't left the hostel once. I mustered the will to get up and mindlessly exited the room. It'll happen in 2 days. Am I really not going to do anything just because I convinced myself that there's no point? It wasn't just that. I knew there was no point, and I didn't want to live through it again. When I came back up, all I could do was fall on the bed again. I shouldn't change worlds now. I have to wait here. There are many days left until the 15th. It's November 28th, so the Sekimeiya was just found yesterday. Wait. This is wrong. That can't be the case. I ran to the kitchen, but I stopped myself before I opened the refrigerator. No, I shouldn't open it. I have to think this through first. I entirely failed to consider this. Katai told us the Sekimeiya were found on November 27th. It's impossible though, I have them right here, exactly, and they can't be duplicated. I talked about this in the last episode. In the attic, when I made the Sekimeiya travel with me, I couldn't duplicate it. The original one disappeared as soon as I appeared. Only one version of each can exist. So when I appeared with them on the 24th, the ones on the mountain must have disappeared. It's already the 28th, so there's no way they were found yesterday. Which means that the whole thing with the tower and the event and the explosion and none of that can happen. Because there's no reason for it to happen, because it all happened because the Sekimeiya was found. I stared at the shut door. The Sekimeiya must have been inside, but the past couldn't be changed. That meant I couldn't witness its interior before thinking, as I hadn't actually seen the Sekimeiya since 3 days prior. If I opened the door and see neither of them there, and either saw them there or didn't see them there, it would be a fact, locked in place. Not knowing for sure whether they were there or not was far smarter. It doesn't make any sense. I know the incident will occur on the 15th, so the Sekimeiya had to have been found. The event was announced tomorrow on the 29th. That can't happen if the Sekimeiya aren't found on the 27th. However, it would happen. It had to, or else everything would have been entirely different on the 15th. The tower had to be shut on the 15th, and I had to be there. That was how I could find Mia, and the real Shidoya. But I had the Sekimeiya. If that had removed the ones on the mountain, the butterfly effect would surely be immense. That was why I had to consider a certain question, and why I hadn't opened the refrigerator. Was there a way for the Sekimeiya to have been found the day before? Is there any chance? If they were found, they can't be here anymore. Similarly, if they're here, they couldn't have been found. Is it impossible? They can't be. There was one important fact. I knew where the Sekimeiya had been found. Katai had described an area that matched with a place I knew very well. If they're here right now, I could travel to the past and appear with them again as long as I know that I'll have them in the future. Then, I could leave them on the mountain before the 27th. That doesn't work though, the past would be changing. If I ever appear with them in the past, the ones in here would disappear, and I wouldn't be able to travel in the first place. It's not possible. They couldn't have been found yesterday. But the past can't change, can it? Does that mean that they're not in the refrigerator anymore? If I never open it, should I assume that they made it to the mountain somehow? What if someone travelled to the past after I did, holding the Sekimeiya? That's the way that they could have disappeared from here. Was something like that what I had to assume? How the hell had the Sekimeiya even ended up on the mountain? And why had they gotten to Ashiya Tower given their powers? I recalled what Katai had told us. Eventually up the mountain, there's a small field that's pretty well hidden. It's not easy to spot, and you have to deviate onto a smaller path. All I was told was that it was a fairly hidden place. There, this was found. What he pointed at was the third Sekimeiya, the one that didn't work. Where the hell did that one come from? There were 3 Sekimeiya since that morning. What really happened on the 27th? Were those 3 Sekimeiya found? And was that really the same place Shidoya and I used to go? It can't be that only the 3rd Sekimeiya was found. When Katai told us that story, he must have been talking about all the Sekimeiya. They were all found by the same person. However, Katai never mentioned any other Sekimeiya existing that entire day, and I'm sure he and Naomi knew about it. So technically, I might have a way to make Katai's words a reality, that a Sekimeiya was found on the 27th. I only have to assume that he avoided saying when the others were. The first one was found on the 27th. This makes sense. There was another assumption I had to make, that I was no longer in possession of the future Sekimeiya. Finally, when the loop I had to make was in my head, I was ready to open the door. A single Sekimeiya was there. It's the past Sekimeiya. This is all I can do to fix my mistake. I took it out as I glanced at the clock. I could still go to the past. I could make it back to the 27th. Once there, I had to take the future Sekimeiya out of the refrigerator and bring it to the mountain. so that it would be found on that day. Then, after that point I travel, the past Sekimeiya will have to be left there too. It'll be found after the 27th, but that doesn't contradict anything that we were told. The temperature in the hostel wasn't the same as the towers, so the amount of time I had to store was different. Fortunately, the formula was the same, so after I noted down how far I travelled after storing 2 minutes, I knew how long I had to wait to make it a day back. Why does he care about making it... This is what I have never understood about his entire character. Why does he give a shit about making sure that one of the Sekimeiyas is found when it's meant to be found? Who cares? Let them not find it. Fuck it. Change the past. Or don't. Who gives a shit? Right? Just let it happen. I'd sit back, have a cup of coffee and see what happens, you know what I mean? Fortunately, the formula was the same, so after I noted down how far I travelled after storing 2 minutes, I knew how long I had to wait to make it back a day. It was a little over half an hour, but I couldn't touch it there due to the large range that would form. I'm certain it still gathers energy outside if it's in the suitcase, because when I touched the Sekimeiya after arriving here, I travelled a lot further into the future than expected. I put the Sekimeiya and the clock inside the suitcase before walking down the stairs with the hostel keys. Below, I stepped out of the hostel for the first time and walked toward one of the tallest mountains I could see, past the buildings. I walked up until Iron's slope was before me, close to Ashiya Tower. Far in the past, there had been a path up the mountain, but I could no longer distinguish it. When I stepped up, my feet sank deep into the snow. The layer there was much thicker, and it showed clear signs of human presence. Soon the trees began to cast many shadows around me, but I hadn't lost track of where I was. My legs continued moving autonomously until the sun was visible again. This place, a vast field surrounded by trees. It had been quite a few years since I'd been there, as evidenced by the tall grass that had grown in. This is where the Sekimeiya was found. I can't believe it. How is it even possible? This is our special place. I trudged along and arrived at a cabin tucked next to the tree line. Now this place hadn't changed much. Who had been the last person to open that door? The inside looked exactly like the cabin in my memories. After taking a closer look at the place, I noticed something thrown away in the corner. Was a stuffed tiger, much smaller than I recalled. It didn't seem damaged, and it looked at me with the same smile as always. Sitting on the wood, it appeared to be waiting for Curator to come back and put him in the small pocket of his school bag, from where he would peek out at the vast mountain landscape. I stepped back out, opened the suitcase and looked at the clock. It was 2:03. After that, I tested how far I'd travel if I kept the Sekimeiya in the suitcase for 2 minutes. I appeared inside the cabin next to the door. When I looked outside, I saw myself in the middle of the field. 35 seconds later, I disappeared. I see. So I have to keep it in the suitcase for about 40 minutes. I want to make it to yesterday morning. The Sekimeiya was on the grass, next to the suitcase and the clock. I put it inside at 2:05. I had to leave the suitcase there. Surprisingly, the cabin made for a good shelter from the cold. It had a bed and a hatch in the floor, leading to an empty basement. There was much less dust than I had imagined, but I busied myself wiping it off. I couldn't get over the fact that the Sekimeiya had been found there, but perhaps I was too full of myself for thinking that it could have been anything more than a coincidence. I spent the last stretch sitting on a bed. I could see the suitcase through the window, and at 2:43 I stood up. I grabbed the clock and walked outside. I'll have to touch it as soon as I open the suitcase. I locked my eyes on those numbers. As soon as 2:45 appeared, I opened it. At that time, when my right hand reached for the Sekimeiya, my left one gripped the suitcase handle. In an instant, the sun disappeared. I was in the hostel, and seconds later, I noticed the faint noise surrounding me. It was my own self sleeping. When I glanced at the clock, I saw the red numbers I'd expected. 7:01, November 27th. I felt the hostel keys in my pocket and my hands weren't empty. One was holding the suitcase, while the other had a replica of the clock. However, its screen was blank. This again. I held them when I touched the Sekimeiya so that they wouldn't remain on the field. Only the past Sekimeiya had been left there, so that it was found later. I stepped to the kitchen without making noise. When I opened the refrigerator, I saw both Sekimeiya. I grabbed the one on the left, the future Sekimeiya. I suppose I have to hurry. I didn't see the future Sekimeiya in the field, which means that it'll be taken today. I put it in the suitcase and walked out. The sun was beginning to rise. I took the same route back to Iron. I walked up, carving a path through the trees. Eventually I stopped myself and looked back. I'm leaving the traces of footprints I saw. I kept going until I arrived at the field, covered by the shadows cast by the tall trees. Before I got to the cabin, I took the Sekimeiya out and left it on the ground. I'm sure I would have seen it if I'd still been here. Oh, it's a lot dustier in here. I suppose that makes sense. I'll have to stay until I can return to the hostel. I'd had to spend a full night inside. I'd done it in the past, but a story from earlier in 2011 made me feel a little unnerved at the prospect. It'll be fine. It's not so cold that I'm going to freeze, and it's only one night. It's nothing new. I just had to wait there like I'd been doing in the hostel. Strangely, the cabin made it easy. The memories all came to me as I stared at the little tiger on the floor. I didn't want to take him with me. Shiroi and I would come back for the one in our world. After a while, I removed the dust from all the wooden furniture, doing my best not to breathe in. The clock I had wasn't working, so I had to rely on the sun to know the time. Before it set, what I'd been expecting finally happened. Through the window I saw an old man emerging from the trees. He slowly got closer, stunned by the place he discovered. When I saw his face, I recognized him. He was the owner of Musashi Gemstones. He stopped in the middle of the field, he crouched down, and I saw the Sekimeiya between his gloves. What the hell is going to happen with it? I know it'll be found out that cold temperature is needed to not damage it, but will it really be brought to Ashiya with no understanding of its powers? Wait, is he coming in here? The door to the cabin opened. Keeping my mouth shut, I waited until it closed again. Then I emerged from below. I could see the man walking away through the window. That's it then. Everything happened as intended. Of course, the past didn't change. You made sure it didn't change. I sighed faintly before falling back on the bed. I'm getting really hungry, and I don't have water either. At the very least, I became tired fairly quickly. Soon, light stopped coming through the window, disappearing along with my awareness. It was the third time I'd woken up on November 28th of 2011. I felt exhausted, and I had to walk all the way down the mountain path again. I should go as soon as possible, seeing as I have some energy. I need to eat and use the bathroom too. Yawning, I put the clock in the suitcase and drowsily moved through the row of trees. The sun was well past the mountains, so I'd slept for a long time. I entered the streets of Yushibana and walked to Eagle Hostel. I quickly looked at the time, it was 10:29. There's still a while until my past self comes to the cafeteria, so I can't be there until then. I can be there until then, sorry. It was a free buffet, so nobody'd be surprised by my eating habits when I came back down. I took my time, only accepting that I was full once about an hour had passed. I waited, hidden from view until my past self came down. Soon after I left, I reappeared from the stairs holding the suitcase and wearing an uneasy expression. Finally, I could go back up. I unlocked the bedroom and staggered in. I don't have the Sekimeiya anymore. Now I can only change worlds on December 15th. I'd had them sitting in the refrigerator for so long without using them, it was undeniable that I could have obtained anything with them. So I'd once talked about winning the lottery with ease, but I hadn't worried about that because of the single guarantee that I had. On January 5th, I would have both Sekimeiya. I can't rest easy for today just yet. In the afternoon I had to make sure that to be in the possession of the keys, clock and suitcase. Otherwise it would have disappeared when I touched the Sekimeiya on item. Two days passed. It was November 30th, a day that would never fade from my memory. The Sekimeiya event had been announced the previous day, so everything would happen in the same way. I didn't leave my room. By the time the evening came, I was stuck in a loop of reliving the explosion and its aftermath, shaking my head to drive those thoughts away, and having them return not long after. And there was nothing I could do to stop it. If I tried to, I would have failed miserably. I attempted to close my eyes, doubting I would ever fall asleep. 7-11, December 1st. I got new batteries for the clock and confirmed it was accurate. I gingerly rubbed my eyes, grateful that I'd at least been able to sleep a little. When I fully regained my senses, I quickly got up and dashed out of the room. The news. I need to see what happened. I had a fact to work with. Mia would exist on December 15th, nervous at what I'd find. I intently watched the television. The news was just starting. Before I could think, I saw text scrolling horizontally. Gas explosion in Yushibana. At a low volume, a reporter began to talk about it. Last night a gas explosion occurred at a gem shop in Yushibana. An unknown individual released smoke that knocked 4 people unconscious, and sometime later an explosion occurred due to a gas heater that had depleted its surrounding oxygen. Given the size of the explosion, the flame had been out before the smoke's release. Since everyone present was unconscious, nobody was able to recognise the artificial smell of gas, which had nowhere to leave the enclosed space. At 9 o'clock, when the lights were turned on, a dust explosion occurred due to smoke and gas. Its impact hit 2 young girls who'd fallen unconscious, 19 and 20 years of age. One of them was taken to hospital after falling through the broken floor, but her condition is stable, as she was shielded by a shelf. The body of the other girl has not yet been found, but the chances that she is alive are slim. The other 2 people, a 19-year-old boy and the owner of the shop, were far enough away from the heater that they avoided major damage. The identity of the person who released the smoke is being investigated, as is their motive. Despite the outcome, it is unlikely that the explosion was intentional, and nothing has been reported as stolen. I see. This is before they found her jaw. I don't even know why I could expect anything else. After hearing everything again, my heart dropped into a black abyss. It almost felt like I'd been told the news for the first time again. I really was powerless. The immense power I'd been able to wield meant nothing. Over 2 weeks were left until the 15th. Miserable, I shut myself in the bedroom. Knowing what was coming wasn't enough. I wound up isolating myself from the world in the exact same way I had the first time. I wanted to see Shiroya. My thoughts were a mess, but all the uncertain possibilities ahead of me made me listless. And I love the soundtrack in this game, it's so good. The next time I stepped out of the hostel was December 9th, a Friday. Late in the evening there was a place I wanted to go. On the 15th I'd be able to use the Sekimeiya again. That meant I had to be there and that the past would repeat. However, naturally, I couldn't be in the lobby with everyone else, I had to enter the other way. Ashiya Tower was before me. I could see the people through the door and light behind all the windows. The Sekimeiya have to be inside. Ashiya are waiting for Shin's attack. I found them. Perhaps I could change worlds before the incident, even though that wasn't my goal. I felt the rusty surface of a key in my pocket. I would have to use it to enter the tower without being seen. First though, I stepped into the lobby. After being checked for any devices, I approached the reception desk and brought an entry pass to the hallways. I wanted to enter the tower in case I could pinpoint the Sekimeiya's location. I was curious to know if both had been found. However, I was met with a forbidden entry sign on the door to the event room. As expected, they're being kept in here. I shouldn't bother checking inside. That could bring me problems, and there's no way only one was found anyway. I knew the cameras around me were displaying my image in the security room. Katai shouldn't have been there, but someone was watching my movements. I wonder if whoever's in the security room also knows about the storeroom's secret. As I was visiting the place normally, I entered the few crystal rooms and looked through their cabinets. All the gemstones were the same as the ones on the 15th. Then as I went through hallway A, I stopped myself before the storeroom. I opened its door curiously and peeked inside. I wanted to see if my key would unlock the door. When I'd been in the tower, it hadn't unlocked the exit from the inside. I closed the door behind me and rapidly opened the secret wall. The handle was there, and with the rusty key inserted in the keyhole, a rough turn unlocked it. The door opened. Through a small gap I could see the snowy grass next to the tower. I frowned, but I couldn't waste time. As if nothing had happened, I stepped back into the hallway. The few people there didn't seem to mind me, so I walked back to the lobby. Why did it not work on the 15th? No matter how much I tried, the lock wouldn't budge. Whatever the reason was, it had worked in my favour. Katai hadn't been able to escape. If he had, and the others found the door, they would have been able to get out too. For things like that, I wouldn't be able to figure out the mechanics behind the Sekimeiya. I couldn't be calm though. If the key wouldn't work on the 15th, perhaps I wouldn't be able to enter the tower. I haven't seen you here before, have I? Have you taken a look at this? I was about to step up when a voice called for me. It was a receptionist who held out a green paper that I recognised. The Sekimeiya event, right? I heard about it, yeah. I'm glad you have. Have you decided if you'll come back? I might. Fantastic, I'll see you here then. Huh? I grabbed the flyer as she waved. By the time I stepped out of the building, the sun was completely gone and only the cold was left, and nobody was outside. I walked to the left side of the building, hearing the woman's voice replay in my mind. Fantastic, I'll see you here then. I did see her, I remember that. I went to the wall where the secret door was. Stepping on the tall grass, I felt the surface of the wall carefully until I was next to the storeroom. This is the door, I can see the keyhole too. I left it slightly open, so it'll be easy to find. With the key, I verified that I could lock and unlock it from the outside. It works. I should be able to enter through it as long as it still works on the 15th. I walked away with the uneasiness that the receptionist's words had caused. I'll see you there then. When Shiroya and I stepped into the tower, she didn't react to me at all. We were there extremely early and spent hours in the lobby, but it was as if she'd never seen me. That makes sense, of course. In that world, she had never seen me. But in this one, when Shiroya and I entered the tower, the receptionist won't react the same way, will she? Because of the brief conversation we just had. Didn't that mean I'd just changed the past? I changed something that I'd experienced in the other world. I began to walk somewhere. She's a receptionist, she won't remember you, she deals with people every fucking day. Such is the way with the service industry, you can't afford to remember every single person. Of course, this world isn't identical. What happened on the 15th was different, but none of that was related to my presence, was it? There might have been a big mistake in my reasoning. Why was I not able to change the salt pattern? Because I'd already seen it? In that sense, the past could be changed. However, in this world, I never did experience the wait in the lobby before the hallway doors opened. I could have caused that event to differ from my world's, but I never truly changed this world's history. I came to a very familiar street. It was my own. and I could see my house far ahead. There was a light behind 2 of the windows. Our sleep schedule was all over the place. I spent most nights awake. I couldn't see my own outline, but I remembered staring through that window every night. For that reason, the image I'd always seen was still engraved in my mind. I got closer to my house, hiding myself behind the gate. A lot of snow had piled up on it. Without thinking twice, I shook it all off. I was right. I changed my past, but not the past of the Yatsuki from this world. In my memories, the snow piled up on the gate never fell. No rule had changed. I hadn't erased what I'd lived through. What had once happened couldn't be reversed. However, I truly had power in the world I was in. It was a real second chance. I couldn't change my own past, but I could just change the other Atsuki's past. That doesn't make sense though. Why would you be able to change one world's past, but not your world's past? That means your world's past could be changed, just not by you. It would just have to be by someone else from a different world. Seems like a very arbitrary rule. I thought that everything would happen as the universe had decided, that my input would always be meaningless, but that wasn't the case. I had taken an action all by myself and changed something. I locked up. Did that mean I could have saved Mia? If I hadn't waited in the hostel, could I have prevented her death? Even if that was the case, I'd already failed. I'd failed to do it, and it was irreversible. Because I'd seen the news, I'd witnessed history of the world I was in, so it was no longer any different from my own. I'd had a chance, and I'd failed to notice it. The reporter had spelled out my negligence. I hadn't acted, so nothing had changed. No, that can't be. It's the same case. Even though I've seen the news in this world, I've never seen any physical indication that Mia is dead. That was the biggest barrier in my world, and it doesn't exist here. The news report is the only real obstacle, and it's a crossover one. I no longer had the Sekimeiya. I couldn't travel back to the 30th. However, if I could, Mia's death could be averted without the need to change the past. It isn't yet an impossibility, and I knew everything that I'd lived through would repeat, so I could be certain on the 15th I would have the Sekimeiya for myself. Finally it made sense, and my eyes went wide. The reason why Mia had been in the tower, I understood everything, as it all aligned with what I had to do. Because you've already saved her in the future, yeah, obviously. I arrived at the hostel where I could be isolated from the world until I was certain about everything. I couldn't look at the news. Everything had to be in my head before the result was given to me. The last days passed quickly. It was about to be December 15th once again. I knew what I wanted to do, and I knew it would work. The end was still vague. I had to go back to my world, and I couldn't know how smoothly that would go until the time came. However, I'd prepared extra steps before that point. In the tower, more than one person had been a killer. Someone had caused the attack, trapping all of us there. Despite all that, the security cameras weren't reliable enough to prove anything. I couldn't stand the thought of letting those criminals run free after everything was over. For that, I had to obtain 2 things. A USB drive and a fish suit. Those are 2 4-letter words. Oh man, come on. Wait, this is not... Oh no, not settings. Where are we? Search. Give me search. Somebody caused the attack, trapping all of us inside, despite that the security cameras weren't reliable enough to prove anything. I couldn't stand the thought of letting those criminals run free after everything was over. So the USB drive would be to store the data off the cameras, I guess? Right? Ah, fuck it. Go. Just tell me the answer. In one hand, I had an empty USB drive, in the other, I had duct tape. How the fuck was I gonna guess that? While we've been unconscious, someone had hidden the Sekimeiya in hallway B crystal room. Perhaps there was more of the attack that they had wanted to keep hidden. I thought of a way to expose what they kept, as well as a hidden secret. It's the tape that's why the camera in that crystal room wasn't dirty, right? Did he put duct tape on that to stop it from getting dirty? Is that what the duct tape's for? I don't fucking know. I stepped out of the hostel when the sun had already risen. I couldn't be in the tower too early or I'd conflict with what I needed. Basically, all smoke residue had faded from my clothing, and I'd left the suitcase and my clothes from the 24th in the bedroom before departing. On the way, I grew nervous. Was it going to work? Had I overlooked something? Was there anything crucial I was missing? In the world I was in, I could save Mia. I knew that for sure. My uncertainty went further than that. The news and the note that I'd read in the tower, they signified the real problem. How would it be solved? I'd only be able to come up with a vague idea. I could see the tower in the distance. I still hadn't shaken off that unsettling feeling, but I'd know it wouldn't disappear until everything was settled. People were by the entrance. I could see Sudoppo and the line of civilians from that day. However, the left wall was unguarded. I surreptitiously approached it. Immediately, what I'd been very curious to see was apparent. It really is there. The rusty key was inserted in the outer keyhole. Really? Does this actually make sense? The reason why I hadn't been able to unlock that door from the inside. I thought that if an identical key had been on the opposite side, perhaps I wouldn't be able to turn it from the inside. I wanted it to be there. If it is one of those big old keys, then yeah, you can't. You can't put another key in when there's already one in there. I needed to remain outside so the door wouldn't be unlocked from the inside, so that Katai couldn't escape, and so the others couldn't leave when they found the door. But why was that key there? If it was just because I'd known it would be there, that didn't really satisfy me. Am I supposed to assume that I'll leave it here the next time? Then, to still have it in the future, I'd have to get that key Shiroya had. That had to be the answer. That meant that a future self of mine was already in the tower, but it was a bit hard to swallow. I'd just be leaving the key behind to explain why I hadn't been able to unlock the door. If that was it, maybe there was more to it than I was missing, as the origin of the idea was unknown to me. Despite the universe apparently deciding the outcomes of things by itself, actual ideas that went into effect had consistently originated from a human mind. I still thought that had to be the case, but it wasn't like I had a better explanation ready for the key. I locked the door while it was open and stepped into the storeroom. Once inside, I was able to close the door behind me, leaving it locked. It was fortunate to see the door work like that. And once again, I wonder why the hell it existed in the first place. I still had the rusty key in my pocket, but when I tried to use it from the inside, it wouldn't budge. As long as the other one was inserted, opening the door from the inside would be impossible. I got closer to the hallway. It would very soon be 9 o'clock. Katai won't be in the security room. Nobody will see me getting out of here. I'll be recorded. Maybe the footage will actually be seen by the police. That doesn't matter though. I paid the utmost attention for any sound to use as a cue. There it was. As soon as I heard footsteps, I opened the door. When I glanced toward the lobby, I saw two people. One was Katai, who had just left the security room, and the other was the man I'd never seen. He saw me exiting the storeroom, but he paid no mind as he kept approaching. I couldn't afford to waste time either. Casually, I walked to hallway C. I made it just in time to see the event room closing. The first group was there. I had very little time. The second group would appear at any moment. Fortunately, I was done in less than a minute. It had gone as smoothly as I'd hoped. I wanted to record the movements through hallway B. In our world, Katai had hidden both Sekimeiya and room B4. I knew things wouldn't be identical, but I hoped the truth would be recorded nonetheless. Near the lobby, one of the security cameras viewed the entire hallway. It was high up, but I'd foreseen the problem. Thanks to the handrail in the corner, I'd been able to reach its lens. With the seconds I had left, I sprinted towards hallway C. I had to be somewhere during the attack. The security room. I knew the alarm would lock it. If that happened, Katai could be fast enough to erase the footage I wanted to preserve. However, I could avoid that by staying inside. He told us once that the door could be unlocked from the inside without the need of the key. When I looked at the monitors, I felt like a needle was piercing my chest. Miya is here. She's wearing the Tanzanite pendant. She and I were in the event room with Arcado, and Shiroya was nowhere to be seen. I couldn't believe it. No matter how much I stared at the footage, I couldn't believe that she really was a room away, and that the cabinet covered by that crimson curtain. Which Sekimeiya were there? Every monitor displayed different locations on the crystal floor except for one. One of the screens was covered by tape. I kept my eyes peeled with anticipation. It was about to happen again. I would see the dense smoke appearing out of nowhere, and my vision would blacken. All at once it happened, and I finally confirmed the truth. Did the smoke come from Arcado? That was how it had seemed. In an instant, all the cameras hit by the smoke displayed a black screen. It was Arcado. He'd been the one who released it. When Shiroya and I had appeared on that morning after travelling from January 5th, we'd been able to avoid falling unconscious by looking down as we'd run through the smoke. Arcado had to have thrown himself to the ground immediately to avoid inhaling it, as it had quickly risen to the ceiling. I had to act again while I still could, but I waited a few seconds as the exit outside would close. When I opened the door slowly, crouching and covering my face, the smoke was there, but I was very close to the lobby. Is someone here? Is it Katai? I didn't want them to hear me, so I took off my shoes. I could hear a person crawling on the floor, but when I opened my eyes, I only saw a dark silhouette near the wall. The alarm is even louder than I remember. Unable to breathe, I took a silent step toward the light. I was in time to see the shutter locking in place and the smaller lights turning off. In hallway B, most of the smoke had already gotten stuck to the ceiling. Aside from the second group, nobody seemed to have been there yet. Protecting my face, I reached for the camera's lens and removed a piece of tape. I returned to the security room as fast as I could. Someone had still been in hallway A, but I didn't think they'd noticed me. I still had my shoes in my hand. I looked at the monitors as I put them on. The one that had been covered by the tape showed the dark hallway instead. Its screen was being assaulted by the remaining smoke, but it wasn't enough to conceal the entire image. In front of the computer, I clicked on the program that managed the cameras. From there, I accessed the archived footage. It's all here, but Katai will try to hide it. In this world, the computer was shut down too. On the screens, the culprit finally came to light. Arcado came out of the event room and looked both ways. He did his He did fake his unconsciousness. What is he planning to do? Once he confirmed he was alone, he walked to the cleaning room. From there, he went back to the event room holding a glowing object between his hands. What the hell, is that the Sekimeiya? No, I know what that must be. The third Sekimeiya. That's what the plan was about. A few seconds later, he came out of the room again. I couldn't see his hands, but he walked back to the cleaning room again. This is why only the third Sekimeiya was there when we woke up. When does Katai come into the picture though? I didn't have to wait very long to find out. After Arcado had returned to the event room, Katai appeared from the lobby. Keeping his head down, he stepped to the cleaning room. Was he working with Arcado? I was very confused. He came out almost immediately with 2 Sekimeiya and walked back down to the lobby. He must be going to the storeroom, but he won't be able to escape the Sekimeiya. I'd be caught with 2 culprits behind the attack on. I caught the 2 culprits behind the attack on the video. Feeling the rush, I inserted the USB drive into the computer. Once I located the file of the camera, I saved it on the drive. With this, I can bring it to the other world too. I knew Katai would try to erase the saved footage, so I created a hidden folder on the computer where I copied the file. And I hope the police will find it in this world. Perhaps something else of value would be recorded, but I preferred to cut it short. After all, I soon heard someone running outside the security room. Then, that person appeared in hallway B. It was Naomi. She ran all the way down holding Katai's suitcase, and as she disappeared, another door opened. From room B4, Shiroya and I appeared. Naomi had drawn us out. Then, Shiroya stared at the camera intensely, as if she were looking directly at me. Before I could even process it, they ran behind the sound, quickly vanishing from the frame. Huh? What? Did she notice something about the camera? She didn't tell me about it, but I remember having to tug her shirt so that she followed me. And what was Naomi's role? Given how likely it was that Katai had killed her once, she might have intercepted him after resisting the smoke. I saw us going up the stairs in hallway C, so I changed the cameras. I roll assigned to random numbers, but I managed to display the second floor through a camera that had been showing a crystal room. With Naomi in the lead, our past selves ran all the way up. Oh, was that Katai? He was tailing us, but he collapsed at the stairs 2 floors above. When he stood up, it seemed like he'd given up on catching us, and with his eyes shut tight, he slowly walked back down. I looked at the 6th floor where Naomi unlocked the attic. She stepped in, shortly followed by me and Shiroya. Is Katai gonna come in? I should leave. I made them on display the initial crystal room again and stepped out. Alright, it's time to wrap this one up here, because we're out of time for today, but this is getting good again. Like it. This is exciting. Shit's happening. We're figuring shit out. I mean, we already knew about Arcado and Katai and stuff like that, but it's nice that our boy here is figuring it out, even though he's an idiot, and he... Okay, he's not, never mind. It's nice that he's figuring it out. And he's figured out a way to save Mia. In 2 worlds, potentially. Oh, 2, but not 3, yeah. Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed it. Thanks for watching. Thanks for checking it out for me, and I'll see you in the next one.